Hi everybody. So this is Moussaka on a budget part 1. I wasn't expecting to have 2 parts, but because I don't have 1,000 subscribers yet, hint hint hint, I can only make videos that are 15 minutes and shorter. So this is just a little bit over 15 minutes, but I decided to break it up into 2 parts so that you could get the full experience on how to make moussaka. The breakdown and all of your other favorite parts of our videos is in part 2. And today we're going to make one of my favorite meals ever, and that is moussaka, or moussaka as some people call it. It is a delicious recipe that has layered eggplant and tomatoes and potatoes and a saucy meat mixture with red wine and a bechamel sauce with cheese on the top. It's just amazing. It is a little bit more of a labor-intensive recipe than what I usually post, but it's well worth it, and it freezes really well, so you can make this ahead of time, pop it in the freezer, and take it out when you are having a busy week or something like that. So to start, I'm going to show you what I've done already. And what I've done already is I've cut up the eggplant, and I covered them with water and poured over that and kind of mixed it up a 1/4 cup of salt. So, and what that's going to do is draw out some of the bitterness in the eggplant. After that, we have 2 potatoes and 1 onion. Now, moussaka could be made with only potatoes or only eggplant, depending on what you have, depending on what you like. I like to mix up both together. It's just very tasty that way. So we've got Parmesan cheese, which is not the traditional Greek cheese that's usually used, but it is the closest thing that we have to it that's readily available in America. I have about 1.5 cups of tomatoes, and actually it calls for only about 1 cup of tomatoes, but I had a stray can of tomatoes that needed to be used up, so I'm going to put the 1.5 cups in. It's not going to make that big of a difference. It'll just make it nice and tomatoey. I have a 1/2 cup of red wine, and this is red wine from Aldi's, the Winking Owl red wine. That's really delicious and is only about $2.50 a bottle. So we've got some milk for the bechamel sauce on the top. We've got our ground beef, and that was the same sale from the 3 meals with 1 pound of beef. So I had another pound of beef that I bought. And there's a clove of garlic and nutmeg, cinnamon, and allspice, which is otherwise known as pumpkin pie spices. I just buy them all together and use them all together. That way it's just easier. Some oregano and some parsley. So we also have some olive oil, and what is missing from this mix here is the butter for the bechamel sauce. So the first step was to slice up the eggplant and cover the eggplant with water, cover that with a 1/4 cup of salt. It's not going to make the eggplant salty. What it's going to do is it's going to draw out the bitterness. And I don't know if this is scientific or not, but I've been told that the brown stuff is the bitterness. Whether that's a wives' tale or not is, I don't know, but it does make the eggplant taste so much sweeter when you cook it. So this has been soaking for about an hour or so, and what I've done is I haven't done anything fancy. I just lined a pan with foil, and you don't even have to do that, but I just do it for convenience. And then I oiled the foil, and I laid the eggplant on top of that, making sure that I didn't pile the eggplant on top of each other. The eggplant is a little bit more delicate than the potatoes, and if you can see here, this is what I've done with the potatoes. The potatoes are a little bit heartier. They're also sliced up, also in a greased pan with foil. also your choice, but I've just dumped them on top of each other and oiled them all up so they don't stick to each other, and they can handle being baked a little bit easier than the eggplant. Okay, so I am preheating this oven at 350 degrees, and instead of frying these, which is traditionally what you would do, I bake the eggplant and I bake the potatoes, and they come out just perfect, and they come out soft and delicious so that we can use them to layer up the moussaka, and it's just a lot easier to put them in the oven because it's kind of a hands-off cooking. You can go off and do something else. You can sweep the floor, fold some laundry, go online and enjoy yourself for a little bit while this is cooking. You could also start prepping the other parts of the moussaka while this is cooking as well. All right, everybody, so while the potatoes and the eggplant are baking in the oven, I am going to make the meat filling. Now, putting this together is going to kind of be like putting together a lasagna. We're going to be layering pieces of cooked potato and cooked eggplant with the sauce, like the meat sauce and onions and everything in between. Okay, and then it'll be topped with the beautiful bechamel sauce. So kind of like a British lasagna, the way they make lasagna. Or I could be wrong. British viewers, you can correct me if you'd like. But we're going to start this off. Going to fry up some onions. And again, like always, I'm going to attempt to do this one-handed. So let's see how that works out. Now, and I've got one of these flexible cutting boards, so I can kind of dump that. We've got some garlic cloves sticking here, so I'm going to try and get everything here in the pan. And fair warning to all of my Greek friends, this is not a traditional moussaka. It is, from what I've read, it's fairly close, but there are some things that we are going to be substituting. So we're going to saute the onions up until they're nice and soft. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to throw in, and there are a couple of pieces that didn't get chopped up so well, it's okay. And we're going to throw in the pound of beef. Now, I've seen moussaka made with lamb before. If you want to be really irreverent and not traditional, you can use chicken or turkey or whatnot. But we are going to be using beef. So because I can't do that one-handed, I'm going to put the beef in, and I'll be right back. Okay, so we're ready to pour in tomatoes, and I hope we don't splatter onto the lens here. So the tomatoes go in, the red wine goes in. It's not any red wine in particular, so whatever Aldi's has, and that is the nutmeg and cinnamon and allspice, the oregano, and the parsley. And what we're going to do is not very elegant. We're just going to mix it all up, and we're going to let this simmer together for a little bit until there's any like residual cooking that's left with the meat, and kind of get all of those flavors melding. And if you could smell the smell of the spices and the onions and the tomatoes and the wine together, you would be in heaven like I am right now. This is such a delicious dish, and it all comes from this filling right here. Right here. This is the flavor powerhouse right here. All right, everybody, it's time to make the bechamel sauce, and as you can see right now, it's a tiny bit difficult working with one hand here, but I am making up a roux, and this roux consists of 2 tablespoons of butter and 2 tablespoons of oil. And typically a roux is either just butter or just oil, but I like to mix the two because the oil keeps the butter from burning, and butter just gives everything the best flavor ever. I mean, butter is just wonderful. There's about 1/4 of a cup, maybe a little bit more, of flour in there. So, and I'm just cooking it up. And before you add anything else, you want to make sure that you can see there's a little pat of butter right there. You want to make sure that the butter is all melted and incorporated. And you actually want to cook the flour for just a minute because you want to get that floury taste out of it, and you want it just to taste like sauce and milk and cheese. Alright, so now we're going to add the milk into the mixture, and this is not precious, folks. We're just dumping it in. And I know that there are some recipes that ask you to scald the milk and to add things carefully and one by one and whatnot. That's not how this kitchen rolls, everybody. So we're just throwing everything in the pan and we're mixing it up. And the fact of the matter is that once it bakes together, any mistake that you might have or could have made will be cooked away in the baking process. So don't you worry at all. Just throw everything in and cook everything up. And this dish turns out beautifully. So this mixture is already starting to thicken up a little bit. Right, not much, but just a little bit, and I'm cooking it on a medium heat. I'll actually turn it up just a tiny bit. And that was 2 cups of milk. Now the next thing I'm going to add is 3/4 of a cup to about a cup, depending on what you like, of Parmesan cheese. And again, like I said, I'm just, we're not delicate or precious here. We are just throwing everything in and getting everything nice and incorporated. And we're going to heat this up and thicken it up just a little bit. It doesn't have to be too thick. We do want to get those lumps of cheese out. And then I'm going to come back and show you what we're going to do next. Click the link for part 2 of Moussaka on a budget.